Hey everybody, today I want to talk to you about SaaS retention. Most of the stuff that I talk about has to do with acquisition, advertising, but today I want to talk about retention because this is just as important as the acquisition piece. If you're not retaining your customers, then you essentially have a leaky bucket and you can keep pouring more and more new users into that bucket, but they'll just leak out, and at some point it's a self-defeating thing. So retention really is king when it comes to SaaS. I want to talk about a model that I feel is going to emphasize a point that is overlooked when it comes to retention strategies. If you look at your customer base and you were to say plot it like a bell curve, on the edges, the outliers, you're going to have one small group, let's say the 5% of the people who are going to be raving fans. They're going to be advocates, ambassadors, maybe influencers. And these are people that can be very, very useful to you in marketing. On the opposite end, on the other side, you have the most vocal critics. And they might be taking to Twitter or they might be leaving bad reviews. But this is also something that people spend a lot of time addressing. It might be that few percent at the opposite end who just really need to be managed because of their negative feedback, their public negative feedback. What a lot of SaaS marketers, I think, get wrong is they overinvest in these two outlier groups. They overinvest their time in turning these cheerleaders into stronger cheerleaders and into using this group over here for marketing, and then also maybe just from a PR perspective to try to address the negative feedback over here. But if you imagine that in the middle here is about 90% of your actual customers, they're neither raving fans nor are they vocal critics, but that's 90% of your customer base, and that 90% is often overlooked. And there's a lot of value that can be gained by really focusing retention strategies in that 90%. And I want to talk about a few different strategies and approaches now. The first is managing active cancellations. So remember now, we're talking about this context of the 90% of the so-called retention zone, we'll call it. The first thing to be looking at very carefully is active cancellations. A lot of times people can be fairly easily persuaded to change their mind or to come back after a cancellation with certain incentives. So think about things like maybe once they're going to cancel, offer them one free month, or maybe try to understand what feature could be added. How can you sweeten the package? Maybe they weren't getting the feature set that they wanted. Or it could be other incentives as well, but do testing around that. Don't just let them walk away. The second would be expansion revenue. This is upsell revenue to your, what should be a loyal base or loyal cohorts of users. But you should always be looking for ways to find different signals in the data that would tell you that this person is probably ready to upgrade. Maybe they've reached a certain number of seats. Maybe the use of the product is so active, or certain features are being used enough, and that correlates to higher value. So be proactive there. Look for the signals that can predict high value, and then have your customer success team go after those opportunities and upsell them. And the next one is dealing with delinquencies. And these are payment delinquencies. This one is not nearly as sexy as the first two, but this is often a major, major problem, which is that simply you have this involuntary churn, what's called, basically means the credit card just doesn't go through. It gets declined and the payment method fails. And this is something that this is the easiest one really to manage and to mitigate, because people always need backup options for payments. And if a payment method fails, I would say, just like if there's an active cancellation, don't just let it go, but try to solve that problem, offer other alternatives as well. Sometimes that's the lowest hanging fruit in SaaS retention, is just reducing your involuntary churn through payment failures. And that's really about it. So I would encourage all of you to really think about that middle zone, that retention zone, and think about these strategies and what you can do to really improve the value of that retention zone. And you will definitely see your lifetime value go up. So if you like this video and you want to dive deeper into SaaS retention, then check out my recent podcast interview on Paris Talks Marketing with Hunter Montgomery, the CMO of Churn Zero. He drops a lot of great knowledge about SaaS retention. Thanks.